kind of like an entertaining commercial break from the October Halloween content that I'm giving you guys. But don't turn that remote, kiddies. All right, listen. I know you guys thought that the Space Shuttle coaster in Horrorweentown Festival was just going to be a roller coaster that would take you round and round. But no, it was an actual spaceship. And now we're going to go investigate dark worlds, primeval lands out in outer space with extraterrestrial horrors. And why is that? Because Tim Curran, my favorite horror author who writes badass, aura-farming, terrifying, horrifying villains, creatures, monsters with lots of action, lots of blood, gore, body horror, all that good stuff. He just wrote a sequel to one of my favorite short story collections, Alien Horrors, which of course deals with alien horror stories all on different planets that take place loosely in the same universe. So now that Alien Horrors 2 dropped a week ago, I had a chance to read it. It's been a few days now, so now I gotta give you guys a review. So yes, this ain't technically Halloween content, but we are going to be looking at spooky, scary aliens. So it should still give you some chills down your spine, especially if you're afraid for what's out there in the Black Sea above. So, without further ado, we got 13 short stories and one novella to go through, so let's get into this review.
Weak? You guys are so weak!
This is too easy.
Whoa! Hold up! You'll get burned if you stand too close!
Okay then, stop wasting time.
Gate card, open! Darkest reactor! Oh yeah! This one tastes like victory! Ability, activate! Sword cannon! Whoa! Is it time to worry?
The first story is called Hunting Grounds, and this takes place on the same planet with the same type of villain from a story in the first book called Charnel World. And spoiler alert, I loved both of them. This one takes place with a group of some of the best mercenaries out there, loaded with high-tech combat exosuits and lots of weapons like pulsar rifles, particle cannons, scatterguns, thermal grenade launchers. They are armed to the teeth with tracking remote drones and gear because they're heading out to the Green Hell planet, a swamp jungle planet called Xenos, which is forbidden by the governments on all different worlds for anybody to visit to. And why is that? Because everything on this planet is trying to kill you, from the wildlife to the terrain to it having horrible, terrible things that can't exist on any other world in it. It is a festering just ball of death. And these guys have to head on there. Why? Because a trillionaire that owns this taxidermied private museum collection of aliens has one specimen that's missing, one that he's not been able to get from many different just opportunities that he's tried to do. And that's the species called the Xenoid, which is Tim Curran's version of the Predator. It's the creature you see on the Alien Horrors 1 cover and 2 cover. This thing is the most dangerous life form in all the galaxies. It is bioengineered to just kill in every single way possible, a trophy hunter. And there's even a story about one that snuck on to a colony through a ship, a passenger ship, and ended up killing 70 men, women, and children, taking their heads and taking their skins. So this thing is no joke, and these guys are getting paid so many millions of dollars to hunt it down on its own ground. So you get to explore the world of Xenos. It's raining acid rains that can melt the skin off your bones. There's three-eyed venomous acid-spitting frogs. There's gigantic hornets. There's sawtooth giant tarantulas and centipedes with sawtooth mouths the size of your arms. There's tiger worms, which are python-sized aquatic worms that have mouths full of serrated teeth that can bite you in half and tear you apart like a crocodile. And you got shaggots, which are these 20-foot tall mutant plant trees that are able to walk like people on these, just countless tentacles. And it's got flailing limbs and tentacles, and it's got these serrated flexible leaves which start slicing apart a guy like katana blades. And as his blood and meat is spurting out, it's absorbing that into itself as food. Really messed up stuff. And at the same time, you have the Xenoid, this creature which is able to turn invisible, change its colors like a chameleon. It hunts through the underwater swamps and stuff, concealing its appearance. It's hiding in the trees, hiding in the foliage, and it's unbelievably fast, unbelievably powerful, armored to the teeth, got plenty of jagged spikes and fangs and claws that it can use to rip you apart to shreds, and it's got weapons. As a matter of fact, in the story, you see this three-bladed giant homing missile shuriken that it launches, and the blade spins so fast and decapitates people and all types of wild stuff. You see more traps that it has in the first story from the first book called Charnel World. And yeah, this one's just an in-depth hunting party look into the world of Xenos. And it gets a 9.5 out of 10. It was fantastic. It's got very good pacing. It's got lots of action. It's got lots of cool creatures and stuff involving the planet. And a little bit of world building towards the end. So yeah, this one gets a fantastic score. The first story in the book, in my opinion, is actually one of the best from the collection. So opening up with a banger. The second story is called Mausoleum. This one is about researchers on the planet Mars, which are riding around in a rover during this hurricane-force sandstorm that's happening on the planet. So they got a limited time window to do research and gather specimens or discoveries before this storm closes in at full force. And they end up finding this humongous silver metallic dome half buried in the sand, this giant structure, which is too advanced for any alien life in Mars to potentially have. So they think that maybe another advanced race had dropped it off here for some reason. And as they start investigating the structure, it opens up. They head inside. They see all types of abstract, architecture and stuff. And as they head down below, they find this internal room, which essentially has thousands of prehistoric Martian species taxidermied and hung up on the wall, like the trophy room of a hunter or a museum, or a mausoleum in this case. And it's well preserved. They see giant armored worms and all types of crazy chimera insects. So something's been taking care of the place, a caretaker. And the caretaker comes out. And it ends up being this Terminator spider crab-like drone that comes on 4 spurred crab-like limbs. It's got this giant, emerald green eye. It's got these 2 grabber kind of arms. And as the guys freak out and they realize this thing might try to do something to them, so they start backing away slowly towards the exit, this green ray of light ends up shooting out from the eye, captures a person, almost like an insect in amber, and they can't move. They're paralyzed. They're frozen. And when the other researchers try to grab for him, it's almost like they get hit with a battering ram. They get repulsed away and shocked, and all their muscles become numb. And this guy starts getting dragged towards it, and that right arm, where there's a grabber claw, ends up retracting, and there's all these array of tools inside of its arm. First comes out this long hypodermic needle that spins like a drill, pierces him, injects him with something, he dies right away. Then out comes this plasma cutter that starts peeling away his suit so he's stark naked. And then this tube comes out that sprays him with the jelly that preserves his body. And then he's tacked onto the wall. So now it's up to the researchers to escape and make it back to base, and the rover in this hurricane-force sandstorm. Meanwhile, this spider crab-like drone is tracing them, trying to make it a part of the collection. So that's the story. I give it a 7 out of 10, decent. Mainly the drawbacks are there is so much over descriptions of the sandstorm and stuff, more than the actual villain. And while the villain is unique, Tim Curran's never done like a robot type of threat before that actively hunts. It was a little simple, but again, it's still cool for your... I'm a veteran Tim Curran fan, so I've seen so much that I got high standards. Your typical person starting off his work will probably really like this one. And I like the idea of 2 threats. There being a sandstorm, and there being this drone thing hunting him. That's also something he does all the time. Sandstorm stories concealing a threat, so that's why I'm a little biased, but I still liked it. The third story is called the Skree. This one is about Earth being invaded by aliens, an invasive species that infests the Earth. This one's basically about these countless billions of eggs that are on a migratory path through space, going from planet to planet, infesting it, invading it, and Earth ends up getting a small fraction of a million eggs that lands, starts hatching and reproducing, and out comes these giant hell wasps, these insects from hell that rapidly start killing and eating people, killing and eating livestock, destroying all the vegetation on Earth, and they just keep reproducing. So it's almost like this giant locust swarm from hell that descends on Earth. So it's all the world's militaries against these creatures. They are these 7-foot tall, wasp, mantis-like things that are, grayish and pink and got, skinny exoskeletons. They got 4 chitinous legs with mantis-like raptor arms. They got scissor-like mandibles. They got these giant pink fly-like compound eyes. And they can't smell or hear, but they can feel vibrations and have fantastic eyesight. So humans are getting hunted down and killed. Almost has like a Quiet Place type of vibe just with the invasion part. And then you get the perspective, essentially, of these man and old veteran soldier who are kind of navigating the apocalyptic cities, the worn down places, and trying to get to military bases for help. So I've seen this type of story before by Tim Curran, the apocalyptic one, end of the world situation. So yeah, and the insectoid aliens, I've kind of seen similar stuff before. But they are still impressive. They're still cool. I love the idea of just countless billions of eggs on a migratory path and some landing on Earth and infesting it like cockroaches or locusts. It's very cool as an invasive species alien. They are still very terrifying, and they have this disturbing feature where the females have this neurotoxic stinger that they use during mating. They'll inject the male Skree with the venom that makes them kind of like sex servants. They put them in a state of just absolute orgasmic bliss, and the females will start eating their partners as they mate. And that can be done to humans. Yeah, freaky, crazy kills happen in this one. So it's still pretty good. So I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Pretty good story. Again, I liked it. And I'm sure you guys would appreciate it. The fourth story is called The Soft Ones. This is about a trio of Russian space voyagers on a small capsule ship that holds billions of dollars in rubies that are going to be used for technologies on Earth. But something ends up going wrong in warp drive, and instead of going to Earth, they get teleported to this strange alien planet filled with endless tropical jungles and stays in twilight most of the day for many, many hours. It's covered in a thick mist, and there's this huge moon in the sky with 2 smaller moons basically orbiting and chasing it. So they're far, far away from home, which they're not aware of yet. And what ends up happening is the captain will tie himself to a tether cable to the ship and start investigating out in the jungle. And the other 2 are nervous. They've seen these dozens of luminous yellow eyes looking at them from the mist. They hear things walking out in the jungle. They'll see these flashing rainbow-like, photophore colors in the mist trying to communicate to them, and they'll invoke hallucinations and emotions in the 2. So they're pretty nervous that they're on some weird alien planet. And on one voyage of the captain, when they hear him start screaming in agony like he's being attacked by something, they run out there and they realize the whole jungle is gelatinous, liquidous, because when they bump into these huge leaves, they'll jiggle like jello. When they kick some smaller plants, they'll explode like water balloons, and the ground sinks like you're stepping on like a 2-month-old rotting corpse. So it's a very strange terrain, and when they find the captain, he's covered in these copious amounts of snot-like slime, and he's shriveled down to like a mummified corpse. It looks like a little kid inside of their dad's spacesuit, and they realize that he's had all the liquids drained out of him. And when they put their shoes against his body, it sizzles like corrosive digestive fluid that was thrown up on him. And eventually they try to escape back to the ship, but that's not before the species that exists out on this gelatinous jungle planet reveals itself and finds some new food items in the form of the space voyagers. So that's the story. This one also gets a 7.5 out of 10, pretty good. I really like the gelatinous jungle angle. It's a very weird environment that's fitting for an alien setting. The actual threats themselves, I can't reveal what they are because they were the huge reveal at the climax, but they are unique. They're unique for current standards. They're very freaky and weird and strange and can make you uncomfortable. And how they kill you is horrifying as well, as I described with the snot-like digestive fluid taking out all your liquids and stuff. So yeah, pretty good story. The reason why it didn't get a higher score is because the beginning is very slow, kind of dragged on. The dialogue and writing is sort of more basic compared to his other stuff. So yeah, but when you get to the climax, it is good stuff. So that's the soft ones. The fifth story is called Mice, and this is one that I really love. It's another standout story, just like Hunting Grounds. This one's about a door-to-door salesman that ends up going to this old sweet lady's house who invites him in. She gives him iced tea. She sparks up a warm conversation. And as he's talking to her about his door-to-door job, she also tells him that her and her company do door-to-door stuff only at night. And as the conversation starts getting weird, he ends up getting roofied by the old lady, and right before he falls asleep, he sees her shape-shifting into something else. And when he wakes up, he's in a giant 30-foot by 20-foot tall rat cage on a spaceship that's heading to a foreign planet way away from Earth. And it's going to be a 1-month journey. And he sees in the cage that there's a diverse group of other characters that have been abducted. All of them got kidnapped by the woman. They ended up at her house one way or another. And she ended up giving them pseudonyms, fake names, and ended up roofing them all. And now they're here. You have a scrawny, nerdy guy. You have this rough and tough plumber. You have this high school science teacher. You have this attractive Latina woman. And you also have this younger college-age goth girl. And they're all trapped in there, and this AI voice turns on in the dark because they're surrounded by pitch dark inside of this cage, and they hear this seductive black woman AI voice turn on, basically talking in an old, 60s kind of slang, basically telling them like, hey babies, you're going to be on a long trip. And they find out that, all of a sudden in the cage there will be bathrooms that appear and dining tables worth of food that appears. And they realize that they're being fed and taken care of kind of as pet mice for food to a rare monstrous alien that's in a containment cell right next to theirs. And periodically throughout the time frame, each of them will be selected to go into the cage next to him. And when the first guy goes, it's against his will. He gets hit with a beam of light that controls his body like a puppet and moves him towards the cell. And when it opens up, they see a giant rolling wave of green gelatinous just slime. And it looks like a moving amoeba. And they see a ring of 10 red glowing eyes and this giant glowing sun-like eye in the middle. And a mouth full of just razor-sharp teeth because the mouth opens and a elephant-like trunk, like proboscis, comes out with ring teeth, fish hook-like teeth like a lamprey. And this thing sprouts these dozens of giant rat tail-like tentacles. And that's what one of the characters saw, was this huge rat tail in a cell next to him, and he freaked out. So it pulls out these dozens of giant rat tail-like tentacles and wraps around the first guy and starts squeezing him and constricting him, where blood flies out of his mouth, his bones start snapping, and almost like a gorilla holding a tomato, he ends up getting crushed and exploded into this paste. As this thing starts slurping and sucking him up. And the next guy who goes in there ends up getting the same tentacles wrapped around him like a blanket, and they pull back at an incredible speed like a spinning top, and as they whir, his skin is peeled off of his flesh like a peeled grape, like a candy taken out of a wrapper, and it vomits up this bile on him, which ends up melting him into fleshy lava that it sucks up and slurps and eats. So getting in the cage with this thing is horrible, and each of them are periodically being chosen, so it's up to them to figure out how are they going to deal with this. Can they beat the thing? Can they escape the ship? What can they do? Because the one controlling the ship seems to be a very advanced alien race. And you actually get a story of the indomitable human will. And there's actually a happy ending in this one, surprisingly. So very, very good story, a great one. I give it a 9 out of 10 for Curran. The sixth story is called Lifeform. This one's about a ship that ends up crash landing on a multi-terrain world filled with jungles, deserts, ocean, etc. And one guy's left surviving as a castaway. He tries to find the corpses of his crew members to bury them and give them rest. But he sees that they're all missing. Something scavenged them very quickly, and he sees these ominous raptor-like footprints with one giant centaur-like claw in the dirt. And as he realizes that he has to bury the last living woman who quickly dies, he ends up trying to be like a Bear Grylls survivor, trying to survive as long as he can till help comes on this planet, which won't be, I think, for several months. And as he gets to the jungle, he finds this small ship that's been abandoned there, covered by the foliage, and he thinks that this will be a nice little shelter for him. And as he enters and sees that all the gizmos and stuff are running, there's lots of gear, this hulking creature that's the one that's been stalking him and took the corpses ends up smashing through the jungle and ends up getting to the ship and tries raking it apart with its claws, sticking its snout and trying to get to him, but it can't. And as he brings out his pulsar weapon and looks at it, he sees this 10-foot tall, Kodiak bear-sized, giant chimera bipedal creature that has blue skin and armored plates like a crab and scales like a reptile. It's got these two huge compound insect eyes. It's got 4 arms with these 2 sharp claws. Those, raptor-like feet with a giant centaur claw, a skeletal tail. It's just a chimera of an insect, mammal, reptile, huge thing that's going to be trying to hunt him down and kill him. And as he tries surviving and failing, all of a sudden the world, the terrain, starts helping him out in a way to become a better survivor and adapt more to the world. And with that assistance, it's now up to him to take down the beast and become top of the food chain. So that's that story. I give it a 7 out of 10 decent. The creature was creative. It's almost like a souped up version of a xenoid. I like the idea of a castaway trying to survive like Bear Grylls out there. It's a unique concept. But it gets a little predictable, very predictable, actually, towards the end. The showdown with the beast is anticlimactic. And it just gets kind of a little too weird for me, a little too repetitive. But it was still a unique one. So, yeah, 7 out of 10 decent. The next story is called Slithid, about a recon team which ends up on another jungle planet. For some reason, Curran loves jungle planets in this one. Ends up on a jungle planet with this empty research station that's covered in pure darkness. All the power and functions are down. They're investigating the dark research station and can't find any signs of life. So they suspect something very bad happened here. And as they go through the station, they end up finding this body which looks like it swallowed a grenade. I mean, it's exploded all over the place, pieces of flesh stuck to the wall, and the husk that's left on the floor almost looks like a deep sea blobfish that got taken up to the surface and just decompression flattened out and got squashed in a sense. It's a very morbid sight. And quickly they hear something coming down the dark hallway, and as they put up their lights and scan their little scanners, they hear what sounds like wet feet of a human plopping against the floor, and what comes up to them seems like a man, as its bipedal has arms and legs, but it's covered in palpitating tumors, and the chest region has all these dozens and dozens of just what looks like oval, pulsating, balloon-like, frog-like eggs that are just stuck to it, adhered to it, and its head is covered in writhing worm-like tentacles like a sea anemone. It's got this maggoty white pupilless dead eye in there, the color of bile. It's got this jagged mouth of teeth and stuff, and they start gunning it down. It looks like a walking infection of parasitic fungus, and as they start going through the ship, not the ship, but the station, they realize that all the people, all the dozens and dozens of employees here at the station have been infected by this parasitic fungus that all make them look like the same shape, covered in pulsating tumors, dozens of eggs covering their torsos and stomachs and groin, the wiggling anemone tentacles and all that stuff, except they have a function. They have the ability to expand their body and then shoot out those dozens of alien eggs onto people, and somebody on the team gets hit and the eggs basically stick and adhere to his body, and they have the ability to phase through solid matter. So the eggs start phasing through his suit, phasing through his skin and entering his body, and then they start quickly spawning. So he ends up, looks like he's getting drowned in thousands of frog eggs, and it starts mutating his body into those parasitic fungus zombies. And if you don't spread the eggs in time, because there's a time limit, the eggs will keep spawning inside of you by the millions until you explode, which is what those bodies all over look like, the ones that swallowed a frag grenade. This was the result. So it's essentially like the most fucked up game of dodgeball that you can be a part of. And what's responsible are these prehistoric worms that were thought to be extinct but are not, called Slithid worms, that look like long squid tentacles with eyes at the end and interlocking razor sharp teeth that basically have the ability to move through wormholes in space. That's how they're able to reach planets that are light years apart and infest them with their eggs. They start coming through the walls, like the walls are made of mist, and they start undulating and moving like eels in water, except they're doing it on thin air. And they're responsible for spawning the eggs. So it gets horrific. This is a very creative and very fun, messed up body horror story. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Very good. I love the dodgeball concept, the parasitic fungus zombies, and just the whole egg thing, man. It's filled with some of the best body horror that he's done. Next one is called Hellscape. This one takes place with the beginning of the Empyrean Wars, which is an event in the universe that's been name dropped in other of his stories. Here he's actually showing you what it's about. And essentially this warship of soldiers ends up crashing on the planet of the Empyreans, which is this large desert filled with rocky formations. And they quickly end up gathering their gear and trying to survive there. And as the crew members who were too damaged to get up are essentially stuck in the wreckage of the ship, quickly in the sand all around them, these tunnels, which looks like Tremors, the movie, these tunnels of sand, like dozens of them, start heading towards the ship. And eventually the things inside of those little moving tunnels ends up coming out. And they look like crab, ant, termite, scorpion hybrids. They're these insectoid beings with countless skittering legs and corpse white exoskeletons like a termite, helmeted heads with scissor-like mandibles, crab-like claws and stingers. And they end up quickly killing everybody because the Empyreans are very sadistic against humans, and the Empyrean Wars was them launching war on humanity and doing horrible things to them. So you see people getting sliced apart, their limbs are easily cut off, and they worm on their torsos. They get their brains ripped out of their heads and eaten. They get the skin peeled off their bodies. When these things bite you with venom, it melts you like you're on fire and burns you apart. They also have stingers which can inject you with paralyzing venom. They have something called being crabbed, where they'll get humans, shave their heads bald, and then put this creature, which is like 6 crab legs, gray in skin, beady eyes, just a small little crab that basically gets put on top of your dome, and it'll dig inside of your brain and start mind controlling you so they can use you as like a sentient drone. Yeah, they are extremely messed up, and they're on spaceships hunting down humans. Almost reminds me of like the Zorgons from Zathura, except way more fucked up. And yeah, you get bouncing POVs from what happened, many days prior when they're stuck on the planet trying to survive, fighting the Empyreans, to cutting away to all of them being captured in a slaughterhouse and all the horrible things that the Empyreans are doing to them. So, very sadistic story. You get a lot of good action. I like the Empyreans as an alien race, and I like the fact that he was name dropping this war event in his stories, and now he's like, okay, let me just show you what it was about. So it was very good. I'd give it also an 8.5 out of 10. Very good. The next story is another top tier one of my favorites. It's called Tentaculoid. This one opens up with a woman waking up from cryo sleep, and she wakes up to see that the ship is drowning in darkness. All the power is out, everything is malfunctioning, and there are other cryo chambers of co-workers which are open randomly that were not supposed to be open. And as she starts navigating the dark ship with her flashlight and scared of the dark, it's like a childhood fear of hers, she gets to the cafeteria and sees that a body is completely torn apart, limbs everywhere, oceans of blood, flesh and intestines all over the place, as if something was just dining and killed that person, who she realizes was one of the people released from their cryo chamber early. And as she heads back down the hallway she was just down, she ends up seeing something brand new, which is the corpse of a woman being hung by the ceiling with this thin, transparent wire. And she's disemboweled. Her stomach's ripped open, her intestines are hanging out. And it looks like she's been dead for a few days, but she's just been strung up there. And she hears this kind of consciousness in her voice that's kind of telling her that things are not okay. And it's actually not a consciousness. It is the entity which is hunting the ship, is speaking to her in a telepathic voice, taking on the voice of her when she was a child. And as she gets to different sections of the ship and starts investigating, she'll put her flashlight and see some amorphous shadow bleed back into the darkness. She'll be looking at the corner of a room and seeing something breathing through a dozen different mouths, but the entire thing is invisible. She can't see anything. It's almost like it doesn't exist. Sometimes she'll look and see what looks like thousands of particles moving away. So she's freaked out, and she realizes that there is a serial killer extraterrestrial which is sadistically hunting down the crewmates one by one, hosting its own little game. And she finds out through the telepathic voice that from a planet that's basically deep sea oceans of methane gas, just deep, deep, dark oceans where poisonous, sulfurous clouds are there. There's no sunlight, a complete planet covered in darkness. A entity had escaped from the planet as it was dying out on a 1,200-year migration, and just so happens that her ship fell within the migration path. And this thing is a nightmarish jellyfish from hell, filled with thousands of tentacles, dozens of mouths, and basically it's completely invisible because it's from a planet of darkness. So when she has her light, this thing is completely invisible. It's invisible in the darkness, and it'll do bioluminescence just like deep sea animals do on Earth. And as it lights up, it can do various different colors, and that's the only time you're able to see it. Only when it's doing bioluminescence are you able to see its horrific, scary form. Otherwise, when it turns it off, it's completely invisible and you're not able to sense it. And it's very powerful. It's able to manipulate energy fields, manipulate her mind, manipulate the gadgets and stuff. Quite the horrific thing that's taking on a sadistic game of hunting, and you have to find out how she solves it. Again, indomitable human spirit. This one gets a 9.5 out of 10. Fantastic story. The next one's called When Yiggrath Comes. When Yiggrath Comes is about a recon team of military soldiers who are sent in to investigate another research station on a planet that's gone dark. And on this planet is 5 days worth of night. So you have 5 basically Earth days of straight darkness and nighttime. And as they're investigating, they find the bodies of crewmates turned inside out. That's right, straight up turned inside out, all their organs and anatomies outside. And they realize by finding a guy who's alive that they were researching some ruins and ancient religion on the planet of an alien race that they were not supposed to, and that the ancient alien race was worshiping an entity that was from an antimatter universe, an interdimensional alien that they worshipped as a deity called Yigura or Yiggrath. And it was responsible for the great extinction that happened on the planet, killing off all life forms and making it desolate. And apparently it's done this to countless worlds. And then the guy starts freaking out. He starts vibrating like crazy and starts going 7, 8, 9, 2, 4, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. And then he instantly turns inside out. So when Yiggrath is summoned back because a skull of one of the creatures in its race is left in ruins and researched by the crewmates, and it ends up being activated and calling Yiggrath to the planet, people start turning inside out as offerings, sacrificial offerings to the deity. And space-time starts manipulating, what is 1 minute passing by turns into 2 weeks. A lot of crazy stuff. And best believe when Yiggrath comes, things go bad. Things go really bad. So this story gets a 9 out of 10. Great. Very cool concept. It's like Tim Curran's version of Galactus, the Planet Eater. And Yiggrath has the most badass, epic, biblical level entrance from any of his stories. Really, really cool. And the idea of just people turning inside out as offerings and all this crazy stuff and getting backstory of an ancient religion. Really cool. So yeah, a great one. Next one's called Sandtrap. This one is essentially about a group of Voyagers who gets a distress signal from some space crew members that seems a little bit iffy and dangerous, and they don't know if they should take it on, but they end up going to the planet, and the planet is essentially an endless ocean of sand called Andros, and it really is like an ocean. The sand will move in whirlpools and tidal waves and undulate like water, so it's hard to keep balance. And they find a geological mining ship that's been torn apart to pieces, buried in the sand. Crew members are missing, and as they start investigating it, these weird funnels start popping up in the sand and the ground. And they realize that something is creating those funnels. And they find cocoons on rock ridges of like crab-like, spider-like, funnel spider alien things. And things go bad. Things go bad as they should have not entered this planet. It was actually a trap, a sand trap, if you will. This one gets it was a good story, a little predictable, but it is fun. I really like the Sand Ocean Planet. Reminded me of the story called The Devil of the Sands from the hardcover edition of the first book. And yeah, I like the creatures. I like the ending. Pretty damn good. And also had some commentary about people who like to be alone and loners and even dire situations of isolation kind of being a good thing for them. So that was interesting. It gets a good score. The next one is called Tomb on a Dead Moon, and Tomb on a Dead Moon is about a spaceship of crew members who ends up on this moon that looks oddly like a grinning skull, and as the cloud storms pass over it, it looks like a funeral veil coming over a corpse's face in the dirt, and it's a very haunted looking moon. It's strange because it's 50 million miles away from the nearest sun, and there's no planets or celestial bodies around, so how is this moon orbiting? They don't know. But the captain's very greedy. He thinks that they could find some minerals or discoveries on there that'll make him a lot of money. So he ends up encouraging the crew members, hey, let's go on there and check it out. And they end up doing so reluctantly. It's a desolate, dark planet, but they end up finding this green crystalline pyramid, which is like a tomb that they think that they could get some good discoveries in. And it's covered in runic text. It's very creepy. And when there's an opening and they enter inside, they find these copper pillars and strange geometric patterns and this huge mirror which is on a back wall. And they realize that this is not a tomb, okay, because they see pentagram symbols and strange dark witchcraft stuff covered all over it, which makes them realize that witchcraft and dark magic and the idea of the devil may have come from ancient alien races that visited Earth many, many millions of years ago. And yeah, this tomb is actually a prison cell for an entity from the Lovecraft universe, Tim Curran's version of it, a lesser known one, and things go really, really bad. So yeah, it gets quite action-packed at the end, very cool, but it is kind of a predictable story, relies on the atmosphere. I kind of saw where it was going, but it's still a good one, so it gets an 8 out of 10 good, and the climax scene is quite crazy. Our second to last story is the shortest short story in the bunch. It's called Host, essentially about this researcher guy who ends up crashing his car on this jungle planet, and he has to walk his way back to camp, so he gets to hiking with his gear. Either he gets to camp or an emergency shelter nearby, and as he's on the hiking trail, he sees this extremely beautiful woman who he recognizes as a botanist of a biological research team that went missing many months ago. She's injured, her leg is broken, she's traumatized and not able to talk much. So he ends up giving her a piggyback ride and says he'll carry her to camp. And turns out she's not all that she seems to be. And I'll leave it at that. Again, it's very short, but it gets freaky, it gets weird. I liked it. And the very dark ending implying that obviously things are not going to be done. And it's actually a trap that's going to keep on being sprung. So I give it a 6 out of 10. Okay, again, it was way too short in my opinion. Very, very simple. For Curran in general, I guess it's good horror media, but again, I have high standards for Curran. But it was still, I guess, serviceable. So that's that. And finally, last story, last of all, is the novella known as Death Camp. This one is about various different space crew members who get taken to an alien concentration camp, just like the Jews got to the Nazis. Very wild premise. This one is essentially about this urban legend space of outer space called the Sargassian space, where many different ships and crew members have gone missing out of nowhere, and all the different federal corporations and stuff have kept it a hush mouth. They keep it very secretive, acting like, you know, it's an urban legend that there's this horrific alien race that kidnaps people out there, because they know that if it was public information, nobody would want to go out there voyaging into space. And unfortunately, some members of a crew end up getting kidnapped. It is true. And the race are called the Pyramids, and they do horrific sci-fi experimentations on them nonstop, just like in World War II concentration camps. They're stuck inside of this room that's stuck with pitch black all around it. Like the pitch black is like a barrier that they can't escape, and they each getting picked out and taken. There's this older woman named Mother Quig who is actually shape-shifting. She's actually one of the aliens, but she disguised herself, and they do experiments to see how much humans can survive and how their communities are structured, trying to research them more. And there's horrific things done to these humans. They're injected with diseases that liquefy their intestines and make them vomit it up like Ebola. Some of them get their bones taken out and they're still alive, so they're worming around the cell and stuff. There's one where you have to run like a laser grid where it's essentially like hopscotch, but each place you're not supposed to step on is electrified, so you get a shock from it. They have crazy mazes that you have to go through. There's a pain grid that basically simulates the worst forms of torture, you being skinned alive, burned, thousands of needles put in you, you being crushed, and people scream there so much endlessly that they end up cutting out the human's vocal cords to stop the annoyance. And all other types of fucked up stuff. There's one where the main character ends up getting to an experimentation secret back room where a person has been dissected to the level that their skin is on one display mosaic, their skeletons on another, their nervous systems on another, their muscle systems on another. So as they're screaming in pain, you hear it from several different locations. Their skeleton will open and scream, their flesh will open and scream. You know, the organs, the vocal cords will start yelling from halfway across the room. It is one of the most messed up Tim Curran stories I've ever read in my life, and I've read like 90% of his portfolio. It is so morbid, so fucked up, and after you finish it, you're like, whew. So it gets a 9 out of 10 grade. I mean, it is sci-fi to the max, and the aliens are so messed up looking, I can't even describe them. They just got so many moving parts to them, and it's really crazy. So yeah, that's Death Camp. So yeah, overall this collection gets a 9 out of 10 crate. I know, long video, but I wanted to give you guys coverage of all of them without me giving too much away, so keep in mind you still have stuff to look forward to even as I describe these. And yeah, all of you guys out there, it's on Kindle for $5. You can get a paperback copy for around 20. Go get it, go check it out, and also go get Alien Horrors 1. Read both of them back to back if you can. And you'll realize why Curran is not only the master of alien horror, but just the master of creature features. He's such a creative horror mind, and he definitely delivers all the time. So thank you so much, Curran. Well, now that this is done, next time we're going to be back to the Halloween, so back to your regularly scheduled October content. Bye.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Is this nigga serious? Go fuck yourself.